Pro Football Today crew back up here at the wall.
Wow.
Is it true that we're really doing this just to get some reps in, see if we got the positioning back down?
Do we got any
Tell me
picks?
something.
Is this
Is
picks
this
right
it?
now?
I gotta
Wait,
give a
who's my pick? Yeah.
Yes, maybe a little Sunday morning crunch.
Yeah.
It's possible. I think it's still clear that you two do fit much better over there than Lisi and I do, just from the eye test. But nevertheless, we go over to the Houston Texans, who last year, countless people kept saying nobody saw this coming, despite the fact that, if you were with us on Game Time Decisions, you very much did hear the Texans 10-1 AFC South bet. And it was a product of some C.J. Stroud hype, some hype around DeMeco Ryans, but also the fact that that team did have a soft schedule they could take advantage of. What's even more interesting, though, is now how the conversation is shifted for the Houston Texans. They have just completely replaced the Jaguars. And what I mean by that is if you look back to last year's Jacksonville team, runaway favorites, nobody in this division has a pulse. How could it not be them? Best quarterback. And I'm not trying to downplay the Texans, but it's pushed everyone else in the division aside. I think the best way to open this up, and I'll start with you, Donnie, is do you feel the Texans are in a tier of their own when you evaluate this division?
You know what? You take a look at the odds, right? Plus 105, plus 270, and then you see what you get after that. But for me, it sort of has that Buffalo Bills feel for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the reason I say that is the it kids last year were not the Texans. Like, I understand, like, you thought they would have a solid season, but for me, it was like, it's Jacksonville and it's probably everybody else. Yep. And it turned out, quite frankly, that it should have probably just been the Texans at the top of the heap from what we saw. Like, oh, not buying in weeks 3, weeks 4, weeks 5, rookie quarterback, sooner or later going to hit the wall. They never did that. So when I look at this myself, I say, you're still going to have to reach down deep. And also, you get paid a lot of money for Trevor Lawrence. We're no longer looking at Trevor Lawrence, hey, young quarterback trying to be the franchise guy. He's paid to be the franchise guy. They expect those expectations to be settled this season. So for my money, I'm trying to gauge what I saw from the Texans last year and use it towards this year, because if it's just that upward trend, watch out. They might knock off the Chiefs. Sure. But if it's year number 2, and I don't want to, sophomore slump's not the right thing to say, but let's just not say an MVP trajectory for your quarterback, and he just has a good season. Is that enough to overtake the Jacksonville Jaguars if they're on top of their game? That's what I'm trying to marry right now. But I do agree with the odds right now. Nothing that I saw last year from the Houston Texans tells me this year that they're not going for it. Everything they did in the offseason, the draft, they're going for it this year, and I like the spot that they put C.J. Stroud in.
I agree. I have Houston as the best team in the division, and it comes down to C.J. Stroud. He didn't turn the football over, only 4 interceptions in the regular season, and that's the main reason why I think they're the front runners right now. You look at Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, he got paid the money. They started 8-3, but he was turnover prone in back-to-back losses to Cleveland and the Tampa Bay Bucks. 6 interceptions in both of those games. Travis Etienne was non-existent as it related to the rushing attack, and more pressures on Doug Peterson. This team does not make the playoffs this year. I think Doug Peterson could be on his way out in regards to Jacksonville. I'm not a buyer in regards to what I saw from Trevor Lawrence last year. I know he was hurt, but again, he looked inconsistent. He did not look confident where he wanted to go with his reads and progressions, and that's why I would buy into C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans as being the main front runners. But I'll say this, Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor for the Colts, they should be a little bit priced a little bit closer to the Jacksonville Jaguars as well.
Here's kind of my thing on the Texans. And again, if you compare them to the Jaguars, the Texans did it earlier, right? In that it was Trevor's second season where they were able to win the division, but bringing in Doug Peterson after the Urban Meyer disaster class obviously was a big step forward. But if we look back to the Texans' year, week 18, they had to go to Indianapolis and get a win. They did. And then they needed the Jaguars to lose to the Titans. Otherwise, they still would have not made the playoffs. And I don't think anybody would suggest the Houston price would be what it is if the Texans didn't make the playoffs. And that was something that was out of their control. So, again, we're early out, right, fellas? Nobody here is today locking in, dead set, I got you X, Y, Z. But from a price perspective, it's too strong because of the things that led us to that number. It was the performance against Cleveland, I really believe, that got us there. Again, a performance that was only made happen by a Jaguars collapse.
Yeah.
I mean, think back to the 4 or 5 game losing streak they had. It coincided with a Trevor injury. So if this is going to be Texans as a maybe 12-win team, then okay. But could these other teams bounce back? Or could, for the first time in a while, we talk about the AFC South as a multi-playoff division? We'll get to the Jags, the Colts, and the Titans next. It's SportsGrid, it's Pro Football Today. We are back with you. It is Pro Football Today, an early look ahead with a discussion around every single team in this league. Before you know it, we will be together week 1, breaking down the slate. And before that, we'll have to make some preseason predictions. And right now, the Texans are lined up as the favorites in the South. And I do think that there is a compelling case to be made that the Texans make another leap forward and separate from the division. And that's totally fair. My question then would be, can Jacksonville or Indianapolis, far more than Tennessee, we'll touch on them a bit, but could Jacksonville or Indianapolis, Joe, be a double-digit playoff team? And all of a sudden, we look at the South as not a weak division, but a division with some depth.
No, I think they can. I think both teams can. Again, we talked about Jacksonville and how they got away from the rushing attack with Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne. They were non-existent over the last 5 games of the regular season, one-dimensional, relying solely on the passing attack and Trevor Lawrence. If they get back to more balance and more strong offensive line play, they can be an 11 or a 12-win football team, especially when they have leads. They had the lead in Tennessee at the end of that game, and they let Tennessee take over. So again, you need, especially in terms of playoff environments, you need to be able to run the football, especially on the road or on a neutral field in a Super Bowl type of situation. So I think Jacksonville, and with Jonathan Taylor, we saw exactly what he was able to do, right? I mean, he could take games over single-handedly, take the pressure off for Anthony Richardson. So I think Shane Steichen did a fantastic job. If Anthony Richardson could develop, they could be a 10-win football team this year, Donnie.
That's the problem I'm going to run into now, because I didn't get that, even analysis I would have loved to have seen from Richardson throughout that season last year, getting banged up. The one thing that I do love is he's going to take off, and he won his rushing props. Boy, I was grabbing it left and right to start that season. Touchdown props, over 50 yards props. I mean, he was the man. But the question is, you can't just do that. You can't lower your shoulder into linebackers. You can't run 7, 8, 9 times design per game anymore in the NFL and make it through a 17-game schedule. And correct me if I'm wrong, did it feel like he left every single game he started? Which, again, leaves you up to believe, which it's Tua Tagovailoa. You say, I don't know if he could stay healthy. He stayed healthy last year. Completely different scenario. This is a guy that you look at him as a specimen that says, you know what? When he's running right, he is absolutely phenomenal, and nobody can stop him. What stops him? Injuries here. So how do you sort of hold him back but still have him be effective? That's going to be the problem with me. There's no doubt in my mind they're going to be running the football. The quarterback and the running back, absolutely sensational. I'm just not trusting the fact that I can get a full 17 games out of Richardson, and you can't lean back on like a Gardner Minshew. It's going to be Joe Flacco at, 48 years old, it feels like, at this point. That's my issue.
So it's a good point, though, with Richardson, because that style of play, basically, the run-first quarterback, we go, they're going to get injured at a moment's notice. Yeah. And then it's like, they're not always that injured, right? Like, again, Lamar Burrow, is one more injury-prone than the other? Maybe, and then the answer is probably Burrow. Richardson last year, though, absolutely did have some injury issues. But, man, are people excited about the player? And for me, more importantly, I'm excited about the coach. I knew it wasn't going to go this way, but I thought Shane Steichen was very clearly Coach of the Year. I know Stefanski, and I think he was a fine winner with the ups and downs that they went through. But, a lot of people were talking about DeMeco Ryans because they won the division. To me, that's more Stroud, Bobby Slowick. I just thought what Steichen was able to get out of Gardner Minshew was absolutely incredible. So it's on the board that Anthony Richardson is a star type of guy in this league. And that's the thing. We always talk about the quarterback position first, and rightfully so. So if CJ's already a star, Richardson has that potential, how do we evaluate newly paid Trevor Lawrence? Trevor Lawrence, of these guys, you talk about pedigree, is supposed to be the guy. He had a stretch of football where it felt like that was happening. Again, last year was really, really messy. They are a team, Donnie, it might come down to just schedule spots more than anything else, but I've not given up on the idea that that the Jaguars are a playoff caliber team in this conference.
No, and they should be a playoff team. No question about it. You take a look at a lot of players, good young talent, including one of the best pass rushers in the NFL on defense, a decent secondary backing them up. But you're just taking a look at Trevor Lawrence taking that next step from, I think I'm going to be a good young football player too. I'm being paid like a franchise guy. Now it's time to perform. Now, did it help that you lose Calvin Ridley? No. But Davis, Kirk, and Thomas Jr. out there on the outside, they should be fine at this point. And also, you're looking for a quarterback. Look, we're not going to give Josh Allen any excuses this year in Buffalo, right? We're not going to say, oh, you know what? He lost his number one. It's a shame they missed the playoffs. Maybe they'll get him a number one. That's not the case here. When you are paid to be a top-flight quarterback, and I'm not talking about like, hey, they gave him a nice contract. They gave him one of the biggest contracts in the history of the NFL. He's supposed to perform. I'm not giving up on them per se where I don't think they can win the division because I think they do. They should be a playoff team. If they're not, changes. The head coach is gone. They don't make the playoffs this year.
I agree. 1-5 down the stretch. 1-5. They started 8-3. They were walking through the motions.
But it did line up with Trevor getting injured.
But again, he was in those games. He threw three interceptions against Cleveland. They got absolutely abused by Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield in that game. They completely no-showed. And I understand. Where was the rushing attack? So it's part of Trevor Lawrence. Yeah. It's part on Doug Peterson and the offensive star. Well, but again, they didn't rely. They did not try to win games. It's like they walked through the motions, laid up each and every week until they got to the final regular season game. It was a shootout, and Trevor Lawrence could not outduel Will Levis on the road. And that is the biggest thing. They had how many shots inside the goal line?
Yeah, look,
how many shots? 5?
Oh, no. It was
6?
Bad. It was bad. I'm not here to tell you, whoa, he did a great job.
No.
Yeah.
I just think sometimes and again, we're early in the process, right? What was the last thing we saw from Jacksonville? Terrible. So we then eliminate. They were an 8-3 football team going to try and make a push for the 1 seed at a moment there. Right. That's where it gets really interesting. Just so we don't skip over Tennessee, even if you want to make an argument it's worthy to skip over them, they feel like one of the weirdest teams in the league, right? Vrabel gone, didn't get a job, Levis in. I don't know. He's not a first-round pick, but he's not some fifth-round pick. They obviously think he has some chops. They brought Calvin Ridley in. Yeah. You pair him with Hopkins, who showed he still certainly has a level of juice. Again, the idea is they're definitely the worst team in the division. I think the question is, Daniel, are they a terrible football team?
No, they're not a terrible football team. And I like the fact that we're talking about the Titans because they're supposed to be last place. Then you go, okay, if I get a decent quarterback here out of Will Levis and he starts to mature, I got a decent tight end, but I got a really good wide receiving core. It's Calvin Ridley, it's Hopkins, and Boyd comes over from the Cincinnati Bengals. And then you get Pollard over from the Dallas Cowboys. That should be formidable. But again, it's predicated on Levis taking that next step. So you're right. It's one of those teams that you feel like if you weren't really doing your homework on the Titans and say, let me just take generalities, boy, they're going to stink next year. And quite frankly, they might. But at the same time, I'm going to look at them in certain football games and say, once again, if Will Levis can progress, hey, this offense isn't too bad. Maybe this defense gets it going. Maybe they just needed a regime change at this point because I like what I see. And I think they're going to be, dare I say, a sneaky bet on just say, forget about the team itself, individual players. Like when we're talking about Sunday here, going over some of those crunch players, who's Calvin Ridley, 40.5 yards? Well, you got to give me that Calvin Ridley 40.5 because you're going to be able to buy low on some of these guys. It's
possible. I'm still not sold on Will Levis. What is the offensive identity? There's certainly a different rushing attack now with Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard than what they had last year with Derrick Henry, right? They're not going to be able to line it up and get those 2 or 3 tough yards in regards to, big matchups. So schedule's difficult. They play Green Bay. They play the Bills. They play the Dolphins. I mean, that's not going to be easy. Cincinnati is on there as well, along with the divisional opponents. I think they're a 4-win football team. I'm not a buyer of Will Levis. I thought he was a bust. I think Will Levis, and you know how I feel about Drake May, quarterbacks win ball games in the NFL. I'm selling Tennessee this year.
Yeah, look, I will say Will Levis certainly not a guy that I was high on coming in. He had some moments last year.
He did.
Right?
Victory over Miami, right?
What a crazy
one of the best
thing.
pro days we ever seen, too.
Wow. Well, him and Malik Willis. Let's start that band back up. The South is going to be fun.